ongoing research and thinking about new and creative ways. So lamprey, for example, they developed a lampricide fairly early on that they used to treat lamprey. And they now found out that, there are some impacts on that, so they're going to an integrated pest management approach. One of those is to take adult males and sterilize them and reintroduce them in spawning time. So they think they did their thing, but they didn't do their thing, and sort of reduce their effectiveness that way. So there's ongoing research. So, yes, sir.
Is it true that there are bull sharks in the Mississippi, and if so, they potentially threaten the Great Lakes?
I do not know, but I could find out. And I can, if you catch me afterwards and give me your card, I'll let you know.
I heard that from Howard King.
Ah, well, a pretty good authority. So, yes, ma'am.
What recently didn't New York do something, I recall something about ballast water, and the state of New York decided to do something that was not favored by the rest of the Great Lakes state. What was that?
So the question was about the state of New York's ballast policies. So my understanding is the state of New York had almost the toughest ballast policies on the books. And I heard earlier today that they've repealed them. But I think somebody was speaking about that earlier also in the group. I don't know exactly what they've done, but if they've repealed them, that's a big issue because they're sort of the first state in the system, right? And so you could see ships coming in, just turning around and heading back out, and just not, Lake Ontario would then bear the brunt of that. But I don't know if that's exactly the issue or not.
I like your word, harmonizing state issues.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
The Great Lakes czar having any impact on the
So the question was if the Great Lakes czar is having impact. Are you talking about the Restoration Initiative czar or the carp czar?
I guess
We have two.
The original one.
So Cameron Davis with the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. On this particular challenge, I don't know if that's necessarily in his portfolio. I think the Restoration Initiative is, certainly there's invasive species component to it. There's a much broader kind of approach. And I think it's been a challenge to sort of figure out, after years of having, our resources delivered through a straw, what the fire hoses of, in essence, of resources, how to make sure we get that out there efficiently, effectively, to have the biggest impact. So I think you may have, if possible, bigger issues, bigger challenges. Well, thank you. I wanted just to take a quick minute. I'm just looking at the back to Veronica to see if I do have a quick minute to introduce Elizabeth LaPorte, who is going to come up and talk about some of our resources. Before I do that, I did want to, I had another PowerPoint, but I'm not going to subject you to that on such a beautiful day. Just talk briefly about the other stuff that Sea Grant does. As was mentioned in the introduction, we're actually a joint program with Michigan State University. So we represent the University of Michigan component, but we do interact very closely with our friends just down the street. We have research, outreach, and education functions. So in the conversation today and in some of the illustrations in my slides, you saw some of our outreach materials and heard some of the educational stuff. I pulled heavily from our own materials for the content of my talk today. But we work on a range of Great Lakes issues. Healthy aquatic ecosystems only being one of those, but closely connected to that would be coastal economies and thinking about healthy coastal ecosystems as well as hazards and safe and sustainable seafood. Over top of all that is Great Lakes literacy, making sure that everybody, as many people as possible, really understand the Great Lakes and can make informed decisions when they're voting, when they're selecting food at the store, and when they're thinking about what they do on their own land. So we work collaboratively with Michigan State. At U of M, we manage our resources that come in from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So we're one of 32 Sea Grant programs around the country. They're in all the coastal states. And we collaborate with the state, Michigan State, on extension. So they, through a cooperative extension service, they partner with us to have people in coastal communities around the state, 6 of our coastal communities. And those extension agents are the folks who are on the ground connecting coastal businesses, coastal governance and municipalities with the resources that are at our universities, not just U of M and MSU, but they access any resource at any university that they know is going to help the people on the ground. And we strongly believe that, I think I mentioned it earlier, that a very healthy ecosystem is the basis of a strong economy, but we're very interested in working with businesses and communities to think about the best way to use their assets to boost their economy, to make the places that are going to be attractive to that next generation of folks who are going to build the economy in Michigan. So Elizabeth's team helps by providing all the resources we use when we connect with legislators, when we connect with local municipal officials, when we connect with local businesses. So I'd like you to come up and talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Jen. Good afternoon. I feel like we all need a little sort of stretch here after having a good lunch, and thanks to Veronica and her crew. This is our second time here, and we always enjoy getting out. I love Ann Arbor. I've been in Ann Arbor for about 30 years, but it's nice to get out around the state, and I have to say in my 10 or so years with Michigan Sea Grant that I've been able to see a lot of great coastal locations that I probably wouldn't have been able to see otherwise, or I wouldn't have even thought about otherwise. So that's one of the real job perks that we have, is getting to know some of the folks that our extension educators see maybe on a day-to-day basis, but that we don't see quite as often. So our office is based, for those of you that know Ann Arbor well, near State Street. And some of the things that we do in our office, Jen mentioned. The website is getting to be one of those resources that is sort of never ending. It's like this large publication that just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So I thought the best way for me to sort of show you some of the resources when we can't be talking to you in person that you can tap into. And so we have the fact sheets that hopefully all of you got in the back, and some of the key things that we do. This is a revised publication that's being distributed throughout the Great Lakes. This Protect Our Waters brochure. It gives you a pretty good overview. We hand out a lot of different things to a number of different groups, including Lake Association folks and some other people around the state. And one of the key things that's really important to us is working in partnership with a number of different organizations, whether it be DNR, DEQ, the Tip of the Mitt folks, K-12 educators. So I don't know if any of you watched the national news last night. Anybody watch NBC News last night? No, you were all busy doing other things, right? Okay, so they were celebrating the fact that this woman that was just turned 100 years old was still in the classroom and still teaching literacy, and I was so inspired by that, and I feel really privileged to work with the K-12 educators that we do all over the state of Michigan. So that's a big effort. So this past weekend we were at the Michigan Science Teachers Association conference, and they were interested in some of the same things you were. Tell me about Asian carp, and tell me about zebra mussels and quagga mussels, because I want to show my students that I know this material and a little bit of the science behind a lot of these issues. And so those are the types of things that we do. So if I go here and I go under publications, put this in the right spot here, we've got a lot of fact sheets and articles about a whole host of topics to do with the Great Lakes and Michigan's coasts. So you'll see here this Asian carp fact sheet that you have with you. There is a fact sheet about ballast water. There's a fact sheet about sea lamprey. One of the poster fish of invasive species, but also some a good story to tell in terms of the management response to controlling sea lamprey. So that's in our publications area. And then we have a nice overview of invasive species, but we've also tried to focus a little bit on the native species, on some of the native species that are here. So, what are the birds that visit our coasts and rely upon our coasts, the migratory birds that really, the marsh habitat is important, the food that they get is important. And so, Jen touched on this a little bit, but sometimes we don't often think about the importance of these habitat areas and the food that these migratory birds rely upon. So how many of you go bird watching? Yeah, okay, all right. So I have some kindred spirits here. I usually try to make it to the coast a couple of times a year just to, see if I can identify the warblers and get excited about those, and to look at some of the shorebirds and waterfowl and other things. And so even if you don't hunt, you learn these species and you want to see these species, and we get excited when we see loons, and we get excited when we see these other things. And part of our job is to provide K-12 educators with the materials so that they can get their students excited too, and to provide adults with the same type of information. So we do a lot of distilling some complex subjects down into fact sheets and into other resources. So I'm going to shift over here to our education, main area in education. So what I like to talk about are, camps, cruises, and curriculum. Those are our 3 C's. And so the fact that we have a lot of programs going on, and again, we partner with other folks. So we have these cruises going on that started in the 90s in Southeast Michigan. And now that program is going almost year-round. We don't go out in the dead of winter, but we target 4th graders in the spring and in the fall, and we take them out on either Lake St. Clair or the Detroit River, and then we use the same vessel, almost the same crew, throughout the summer, and we have a program called the Summer Discovery Cruises. If you haven't been out on one, I encourage you to go. I've been on both the Lake St. Clair cruise and the Detroit River cruise, and you see an amazing amount of species while you're on that boat. You see a lot of different habitat types that we talk about, the marshes that are really important to a lot of different species. But the Detroit River is one of those good examples of how that has had an incredible renaissance. We're seeing bald eagles, we're seeing all sorts of different other bird species that we didn't see for a while because the water quality was so bad. And so I encourage you to go out on one of those cruises. It's not that far from Lansing, so that's one idea for you for the summer. And then one of the key things that we could use your help with, and we can also accept suggestions from you about how we can be better about curriculum pieces. And so Michigan Sea Grant and my team in Ann Arbor has developed 2 free online curriculum pieces. And one is called Fisheries Learning on the Web, or FLOW, it's right here, and Teaching with Great Lakes Data, or Great Lakes Lessons. And so those have been exciting for us. We got in order to develop FLOW, we got money from the Great Lakes Fishery Trust, which we are very, very happy with. We were able to hire a U of M PhD student to help us with developing the entire curriculum. And then for the Great Lakes Lessons, we've gotten continued funding from the Great Lakes Observing System. And that focuses on the best of science, technology, engineering, and math, but all about the Great Lakes. So we've taken data about precipitation, about water quantity, about water quality, and all those key issues, and we've got data that then teachers can use with their students to do charting and graphing in the classroom. So, they've got the science in there, they've got the engineering and technology piece in terms of how do we collect data. We're using satellites, we're using data from buoys, we're collecting data from all sorts of different sources. And then we've put it into an easy-to-use format. So some of these data sets from these science laboratories are not easy for the average bear to use. So what we've done is done a little bit of work in terms of putting those into an Excel spreadsheet. So most of you probably use Excel in your day-to-day lives, and or maybe want to. What we do is put that into a format, then even if a K-12 educator doesn't have a great internet connection, they can print out that data set, and they can do charting and graphing by hand, or they can have their students actually learn to use the Excel program and do charting and graphing electronically. So that's an important piece for us, is to try to spread